Welcome to the Scale Up Valley podcast, where we bring the best founders and investors to help you scale a business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest is Tom, the CEO at Cofenster. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mike. I'm super hyped to be here.
It's a pleasure. And you are coming from Hamburg. So great to have Germany back on the show.
Yeah, very happy. We started our business in Hamburg, now also expanded to Berlin. But yeah, very happy to be here and really looking forward to, I think we're spending half an hour, 45 minutes together today, Mike, right?
Exactly. That's true. Well done. And for the ones who didn't have yet the pleasure to get to know you, you have bootstrapped a business, a very highly profitable business, and then you were able to sold it, and then you started Cofenster as a VC-backed company. So we'll have interesting thoughts about both tracks. And the lessons learned in both tracks, but better than me, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your story and how did you end up building Cofenster?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Germany and was raised for the first 14 years in the beautiful Hamburg in the north. And then, I wanted to learn English because I was this German kid and, I didn't speak any English, but I thought it was always really important. So I asked my parents if I could go to the UK, to study there for a year with 14. So they pulled me out of school, put me in a very new environment. And if you're a 14-year-old kid speaking 0 words of English, coming from Germany, going to the UK, countryside, that's the first time where I really, have to deal with adversity. So that was a very, I think, long-lasting memory.
In a controlled environment, so good
in a controlled environment, but boys when they're 14 are not very kind when it comes to integrating new people from other countries, etc. So that was a really interesting experience, but very successful experience as well. And afterwards went studied a bit more, went to Copenhagen Business School in Denmark, met a bunch of really great people. Also culturally, Denmark and the Nordics, extremely modern culture, very far ahead. It was really a great experience going to business school there. Then,
right.
Did a quick stunt at Harvard in Boston, went to the US. It was
Amazing.
Always a dream since I was a kid. I always wanted to go there and see what it's like and study with some of, the smartest people in the world. And one of the big learnings was, everybody showers with water at the end of the day. It's a very German saying, translating that to English, but it was really eye-opening that, at the end of the day, there are really smart kids there, but it's, it's very doable for also, people coming from overseas, etc. And I went back to Europe, lived some time in Zurich in Switzerland, worked for a big consultancy, and found out very fast that I was neither a good consultant, nor was that my place to be, working for a big corporate, joining as an analyst, doing the very specific, highly detail orientated work,
right.
which is not my strength, to be honest with you. I'm good at a few things, but this is not one of them. So, found out that was my path to go, and then started my first business together with a lifelong friend, Oliver, and business partner. We met when we were playing rugby, back in the days, and always wanted to start a company, did a lot of brainstorming in between. So started our first business, Collective Brain in Hamburg, basically a marketing agency with over 6,000 freelancers around the world. So we would go and acquire business in Germany, marketing campaigns for clients, but then the people who would actually produce videos, creative assets, build the strategies were distributed all over the world. And that was extremely cool because, you bring your own money, you bring your first, in Germany, you need 12,500 euros to start a company. You bring your first money, but then you really need to grow from the get-go with clients and sell pretty much in order to survive.
Right.
And build a business the very old-fashioned way of reinvesting, from your free cash flow. And that was a really cool experience. That I really, that did some of the fundamental education, if you want.
Exactly.
What it's like to run a company.
MBA.
Yeah, it was, to be honest,
a real MBA.
It was a real MBA. A couple of costly mistakes made along the way, but it turned out to be a very great business that we were able to solve. And then went from there onwards and started our current company, Cofenster. And Cofenster is a classical VC case. So we basically build video software that we sell to enterprise clients. Because if you'd, for example, take a CEO that wants to do a strategy video once a week to the company, right now clients have two options. Either they call the agency and pay the agency $1 and it takes some time, or they have somebody internally record them, but then somebody needs to cut the video, add subtitles, license music for this video, build the branding around it and do a lot of manual work. So we said, hey, there needs to be a software in between where I can record a couple of videos, throw them into the software, and then the software automatically does all the post-production, so editing, subtitles, music, and makes it look professional. Amazing. And that's pretty much Cofenster in a nutshell. And we've been around now for 2.5 years and grow very tremendously with cool clients all over Germany and Europe, and a great team, to support that. So it's been a very interesting last 10 years, I would say.
Sounds amazing. And kind of the problem that you just described, you found out that problem in your previous companies when you were running the agency, right?
Yeah, I mean, as an agency, you work for clients, whenever they wanted to produce videos, I don't know, to build an employer brand, right, to show their people, or do videos in order to update people around the company, around the new strategy that they want to execute, right? They call the agency, say, hey, Tom, we need this video. And we've produced a couple of, material films ourselves because we have really good cameras and everybody is running around with a 5K smartphone nowadays. Can you fix the material? We're like, what do you mean by fix the material? Yeah, can you make it look nice? We said, you have iMovie on your computer. How about you do it? But they said, it's too much work and I can't do editing and I don't know how to license music, etc. So, as an agency, you say, yes, we do it. But it didn't happen once or twice, but a couple of 100 times. At a certain point, you ask yourself as an entrepreneur, you're like, shouldn't this be any way to automate? Shouldn't this be automatic? So looked at the market, found that there's some players, but not to our liking, and with very different use cases. And then started really from that, building the first MVP, giving it to clients, and being very successful with it.
Yeah. In terms of the stage of growth, Tom, you started the Cofenster in 2019. Where are you guys at the moment in terms of headcount, fundraising, any metrics that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, so 2019 was still the stage where we experimented a lot, and 2020 was really the year where we had software that could be used, and where we officially kicked off our client acquisition. And within the last 2.5 years, we grew now to 50 people, and we serve over 100 clients in Europe, but with a focus on the DACH region right now. So that's Germany, Austria, Switzerland. It's still our core base, and a very on a very good traction, because we see the topic is really important right now, because you had this whole situation after COVID where people went into remote jobs and working remotely, and right now communicators inside of companies and HR folks, they really are looking to bring people closer together and make the information flow that was beforehand, at the coffee machine everywhere, bring that and synchronize that in a form that is consumable also for our age group, right? And video is a great format because you like to watch it. You can retain 9,000 times more information than reading a text. It is more entertaining, but it's very hard to produce. It's very hard to produce. And that's where we come in and say, hey, whatever you want to communicate, Cofenster is here for you. And you can, do it in 5 minutes, produce a video, instead of building this big PowerPoint presentation to update internal stakeholders.
Absolutely. And and it's an art that requires a lot of training to kind of be able to send the right message for the team. It also requires certain communication skills from the leader to be able to prepare the message, right?
Absolutely. It's not only from a leadership. So, people are using Cofenster in all sort of different capacities, from an intern who has his first or her first day, right? And does a quick introduction. It's like, hey, my name is Tom. I'm an intern here. I'm really looking forward to it. All up until the CEO. So it's very, cross-functional and not only reserved for leadership, but really broad application. And, we mostly help out corporate communications as a team and human resources, because these are two very strong cases where they have a lot of need to communicate in a very empathetic way and really get their message across.
Right. And this is an important point in terms of go-to-market. You are more focused on enterprise, right? At the moment, and much more, as you were saying, not being industry agnostic and use case or
specific.
team specific, right? For instance, you shared with me when we were preparing this conversation that, for instance, you don't go to the marketing team for specific reasons, right?
Yeah, and I think you have to be very precise. Which pain point do you solve, and who can profit from your solution? And for us, we found out that marketing, they have very specific editing needs, so they want to produce all kind of fancy edits for external communication, for ads, etc. But that is not Cofenster at its core, because our strength is that anybody can use it. Hence, it's super simple, but also, we take care of the full branding process automatically. And if you do something very simple and automatic, right, you cannot be super specific and build editing features which marketing needs. So that's why we said we focus on human resources and corporate communications as a first go-to-market strategy to really, find our niche and exploit that niche. A little bit like Amazon did in the early days, be very good and then expand from there.
Right. And there is something that's really helped you to have this mentality that is super important in a SaaS player, which is to always add value to the customer and across all the team squad, from the SDR to the AE to the CSM to the account manager. So could you explain a little bit better why that agency mindset helped you to build a more sustainable SaaS business?
I wouldn't necessarily only put it on the agency mindset, but it's, I would say, a more general mindset of value creation, that at the end of the day, we sell reoccurring software. So, we charge people every month, every year, and we hope to serve them for, 5+ years. So at the end of the day, it's really important that a customer, when they come to us and purchase our product, that they, receive value every month, because for us, reoccurring revenue equals reoccurring value. So we've really training teams to make sure that even, when they go to our website, they find a use case, they receive some value, they talk to an SDR, so sales development representative, when they're on the phone, they really understand what's your pain point. Can I help you, Mike, today? What does the help look like? Right. So you might go in and say, hey, right now we have a lot of videos, but we have extremely high agency cost that we want to reduce, and we want to also do that faster. Then I can understand, okay, that's your pain point. Once you talk to our account executive, they can be like, hey, Mike, I understood you want to reduce some costs and you want to become faster. And you sign a contract, you get a customer success manager that helps you along the journey, also go and really understand, okay, my friends here on the sales side, they sold you on this pain point. Let me make sure that once you get onboarded and we check in after a couple of weeks, that you're really achieving what you came here for. And that sort of mentality of following a red thread from the website to being a happy customer is really beneficial, because at the end of the day, it's the customers that pay our bills and pay our salaries, and we need to make sure that they are happy and they get the impact that they came for. And I think that experience and that service experience along the way is something really at the core of what we do.
Love it. That's a great point to align all the members of the team that are in touch with the customer, to be able to provide an amazing customer experience, and of course to fulfill the needs of the customer along the way. it's a great point. So you also talked about kind of the international expansion. At the moment you are focused on DACH and Nordics, and then evolving to other European countries, but much more from a perspective of expanding those enterprise accounts, right? So typically you acquire customers in DACH and in the Nordics, and then you expand those accounts across Europe, because those are large, big enterprise companies, right?
Yeah, and it's a very active choice in terms of go-to-market, because especially with B2B and enterprise, if you want to acquire new customers from the get-go in, let's say, America, you need American reps, you need people on the ground. It's very expensive, and there's a big potential for the market, but you also need a lot of funding, especially if you come from Europe and want to enter such a big and very competitive market as well. So for a Series A company, where we focus on is like really how can we grow our existing customer base across the world, because it's a different conversation if you have a very good standing relationship with a big corporation here in Germany, right, and they have dependencies all over the world. You have a really good reference case, you already through procurement, you have a vendor number, so it makes it a lot easier for people all over the world to then purchase you, because they can call up a colleague and say, hey Mike, you've been using Cofenster in Germany and Austria for the last years. How do you like their service? What are they adding in terms of value? And then you can really, it's an easier expansion than if we go to you in the US and start from scratch. So a very conscious choice, and it's also certainly not easy, because enterprise sales always requires a lot of grit and really people that go after it and also search for these conversations. But really happy with the approach.
And still, it is important to have a multicultural team then to be able to speak the language of those new teams, but at the same time, being in enterprise, usually they're fluent in English, so it might be easier to deal with those enterprise customers as well, right?
Yeah, and it's also, language is one part, but at the end of the day, you need people who can build relationships in sales, because I've experienced this from my travels and living all over the place, that people they buy if they feel comfortable with you and they trust you as a person, even if you're English or you're French, etc. It's not at 100%. People are quite forgiving when it comes to this.
Exactly.
It's about relationship building and making sure they trust you, and also they trust in that purchase, because at the end of the day, they have to report to somebody, and they have to justify why did they spend I don't know $10,000-$20,000 a year on the software. So this whole trust factor is really, really important.
Absolutely. And just giving one step back into your initial experience from building your agency to 1 million plus highly profitable business in a bootstrapped fashion. What made you decide to start a VC-backed company and to move from a highly profitable business to, let's say, an even more scalable business with being very aggressive in terms of growth rates as well? I know you did a great job, because in your agency, you got to 1 million plus in revenue in a very short period of time, considering it was bootstrapped in a services company. And we should say that it's not an easy job at all. What made you decide to start another company in a VC-backed track, let's say?
So I would say there's two angles. One of them is a personal angle of aspiration. Me and my partner, Oliver, we really, from the get-go, we said we want to build a scalable company at some point, because we think on a personal level, we really looked for that breadth of experience and really, playing Champions League in terms of growth aspirations, because, there's two very different aspirational goals depending on building a very profitable business versus a scale up VC back. So that was the personal angle, and then the second angle was the market opportunity. We saw that there's a lot of stars aligned, right? People 10 years ago, you could have not built Cofenster because people didn't have phones or webcams that could produce high quality videos. So suddenly you have a situation where timing is right. The market is really asking for more video content inside of companies. and you see that there's also client demand and you're in a good situation to match these 3 pillars and say, wow, there's a big opportunity here. And the timing was right. So I would say this, these 2 major tracks between personal and market and traction timing.
Right. And something that I think it helps a lot is, and you have mentioned already a couple of times, your co-founder, Oliver, is to be able to, and this is something that usually it's one of the main pains of starting a company, is to find the right co-founder, especially in a VC-backed one, because you are expected to use technology to scale the business. So usually you need kind of a technical co-founder, and there is a lot of assumptions about the way we should build founding teams to start a VC-backed business. But at the end of the day, you need to trust and you need to have a great relationship with your co-founder to build a big business. And we know that one of the most important reasons of failure of a startup or any business is conflict between founders. So I believe that it is being critical that you have met the right co-founder to build businesses with, right?
Absolutely, and it's a huge trust factor as well. So Oliver and I, we started our first business, then started our second business, and then we lacked that, technical angle. So we found a third co-founder for Cofenser, Finn, who was the CTO and really built, the first infrastructure, the first MVP, the first actually running version. And then, between the technicalities of having, strong technical skills and, a matching founding team, there's obviously also a huge trust factor involved. And I think that is the foundation for any, successful relationship, as I also, mentioned with clients, but especially between co-founders. I've known Ollie for now a very, very long time. We grew up together, did sports together, built 2 companies together now. So it's really important to have that sort of trust level and somebody where I would say, whatever happens, I blindly trust that person to do what is in my interest. And that is something, where we can be very fortunate to have, found such a very strong working relationship.
And how do you guys split responsibilities? So you said that your third co-founder is the technical person. Those 2 initial co-founders from previous adventures, how do you split responsibilities between the both of you?
So at the end of the day, it comes down to, what are your strengths and where can you put a person on a playing field to really, make the best of their time. So I always compare it a little bit to sports. I'm actually not a big football fan, but it's the closest analogy that most people really get. If you have somebody who is a really good goalkeeper, there's no point in trying to train that person to be a good striker. You want that person to be the best goalkeeper in the world and put them in a position where that person can succeed. And the other way around. So, we really, at the end of the day, looked at, what are our strengths? Where do we want to play on the field? And then that's how we assemble teams in general, no matter if it's co-founders or also, your team at Cofenster. It's really making sure that people are in their best spot, to get the best performance.
Right. And I think there's a critical step, especially at 50 plus, in terms of the head count of the company, which is the evolution from a founding team to a leadership team. And that leadership team also needs different versions as the business scale. So how has been this evolution from the 3 co-founders to start adding more members to a leadership team to lead the business to a new stage of growth?
So at the end of the day, we were very fortunate to have, to find very great people early on and, organically build our company. And at the end of the day, it's then that step where you need to trust and need to make sure that people have a very clear North Star and, very clear responsibilities, where you check in with them and see, okay, what can I do as a leader to enable that person to really, hone in on that one KPI that they have. But it's about, letting go and then building trust and letting these people run and manage their own days, their own weeks and their own teams. So, that's obviously with a lot of learnings involved, and it's always really difficult as a founder, to let go at the right moment. And sometimes, you find you should have let go maybe a couple of months earlier. Sometimes you understand, maybe you should have been a little bit closer for a couple of months. So, there's just obviously a lot of learning involved. But one of the biggest one is, define a clear goal. That's leadership responsibility. And then measure that goal, break it down in KPIs, and then have people own different KPIs of the business on the operational level.
Let's set the direction, ensure that we have the right people on the right seats, and also don't forget to have enough capital to keep growing the business. So, and in that sense, you also raised a Series A recently. How has been the journey of the business in terms of funding rounds, and any tips that you'd like to share with the ones who are listening, who are going through the same challenges?
Yeah, so in total, we raised around $10 million across 2 rounds, so seed round, Series A round. And I think one of the biggest learnings was that in order to make sure that the business survives and thrives as well, right, you need the right people on board as well, especially from an investor point of view as well. They need to be very aligned and, you know, where do you want to take the company, you know, what are your goals, and make sure that you have a very, you know, solid trust factor involved. So also during fundraising, you meet some people, you know, where you immediately have a gut feeling of this will probably not work, because I'm not sure if I would want to work with that person. I would say really, you know, trust your gut with this one, because, you know, if relationships start off like that, they'll probably continue like that. But we're very lucky to find really cool investors, you know, who share our vision of what we want to do with Cofenser, and are extremely helpful as well with everything they do around the business. And so, you know, that I think gut feeling factor is really important when you choose a partner. And that doesn't matter if, you know, it's in the personal life, it's in the professional life, if it's a VC, if it's a new hire. Yeah, it's a lot where, you know, your brain decides, and then you need to listen to your gut as well and match these 2 things. If you have the luxury to do so, right? Obviously, that's also a very privileged comment. You know, if
to have the option to choose your investors.
If there's, you know, if there's only one option, you know, obviously that slims it down very much.
Exactly. And something that is also important to discuss in this regard is I've been seeing a trend of skipping the pre-seed round, also because it implies some dilution, and for the companies who have the luxury to do that's great, because again, it's another 10 to 15 to 20% round. It seems that you went directly to the seed round and then to the A round, right? Also because maybe you have exited your previous business and you were able to invest a bit upfront to build the second one.
Yeah, we invested a little bit upfront, but then we also had one very big angel, you know, who did an angel ticket, which is like a pre-seed round, who put a lot of trust into us. But I'm not so dilution sensitive, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, you know, if you go down the VC back road, you know, your goal is to build, you know, a multi-billion-dollar company. And then dilution becomes less important, especially in the earlier rounds, because what you need is good partners, enough capital to really go in.
Right.
And, you know, the goal is here to make the cake a lot bigger, figuratively speaking. So I wouldn't try to optimize for dilution early on too much. Obviously, it's important, but, you know, I think a lot of times entrepreneurs like overestimate how important it is.
Right. That's really a good point. So be careful to, at least as we see the common advice, especially to have interest from future investors to join you, that you need to get to Series A at least with 50-60% of the capital. But don't be too greedy, because again, if you don't have the right people around you, you will not be able to get there. So why should we have all the capital and be optimizing for dilution if we are not able to get to that stage? If we get to that stage already too diluted, it might be also not interesting to be able to have the best investors joining us. So. But usually, if the business is too good, the metrics so good, it's a difficult process. But investors are able also to restructure a little bit the cap table to be able to ensure that the founders still have the right incentives to keep pushing the business forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's always a negotiation.
Exactly. And I know there is a topic that you really enjoy to talk about, which is clearly this kind of the VC backed CEOs, the VC backed founders are the rock stars of today, and of course also go through the ups and downs of being a rock star, as we are seeing with the VC industry. nowadays. But there is this perception from the outside, especially the ones who have never been on the shoes of a VC-backed founder, that everything is amazing, that you get to a podcast, you get to a magazine, to a ranking, to a list of the best or most promising startups to watch in 22. And we know that there is a lot of burnout, there is a lot of mental health issues, there is so much pressure, and it's not an easy journey at all, right? So being more vulnerable, being more authentic, it's something that we also are seeing changing on social media, and people being more open, especially in our generation. So what are your thoughts about this evolution on the glorification of a few people that seem that their lives are perfect?
Well, I mean, on a very high level, we all have 80, hopefully 90 years to spend on this very beautiful planet. So I think we need to make sure that, we choose a path that is in our best interest in terms of, maximizing whatever you want to maximize. So first, I think, people need to understand, what do I want to do with my life, right? What are some of the goals? What are some of the milestones that I want to achieve? And then compare yourself to, your version yesterday versus comparing yourself to a lot of other people.
Okay.
And especially, I think in the startup industry, it's all about, headcount, dollars raised, etc. And if that's your goal, right? If that makes you happy, and if that's what really you're after, right? That's a good comparison. But I think for very few people, that's really, the way forward. And I think there's a lot of, especially from our grandparents, that generation, they build very long-lasting big companies, very gradual over time. And I think now, especially if you look at the last 2 years, 2021, 2022 was crazy. And I think these times are probably never coming back when you, had companies with 100, 500 times, multiple on their top line revenue, where, VCs just poured money into it. I think, now we're probably reverting a little bit back to the medium being, profitable growth and somewhat sustainable growth in order to build great businesses. So I think that market has also shifted a lot. And I think it's also really important, for people just to really understand what they want to achieve and then build businesses in line with their personal aspirations, because otherwise, people will get burned out over time if they're just trying to satisfy external needs. And if they're not aligned with their personal needs. And I think a lot of younger entrepreneurs now are also very good at, talking about this openly, about the challenges, that are, in the room, and it's like the big elephant. If you work a lot and put your whole life and dedication towards one goal, being your company, it's also really important to understand, when you need rest and when you sometimes need to deep breathe, because there's natural phases where you can be extremely productive and really work and hone in on your goal. But there's also times where, you need to take the opposite road and understand it's really a marathon and not a sprint. So I think, especially for younger entrepreneurs, that mix and that understanding, what do I want, right? And also that certain level of self-love to understand, sometimes I don't have a productive week. Jesus Christ, it is what it is. We're all humans, and it's completely normal sometimes to, shut your laptop off in the evening and be like, fuck it, I'm done. I will chill now. I will enjoy myself now. So I think that's really important, and something I also had to learn, because at the beginning when you start a company, like, fuck, I need to work 24/7, and it's really, really important. And, everything is important. Everything is urgent at the same time. But
survival mode as well.
Yeah. And, at times that's the best mode, and you really need to kick in, right? It's I think a personality trait that you need to have. But at the same time, you also need to understand when it's time. If it's not a productive week, acknowledge it and dig in next week again. So I think that, having both sides of the coin is really important, and should also, be spoken very openly about. And I just read a LinkedIn post, really cool LinkedIn post from a friend of mine in London. They're building a really great business. And he said, you know what? It's Monday. I'm super demotivated. I'm stopping at 3 p.m. and I'm going to play football with my friends. And I'm going to attack again tomorrow. Sharing something like that very openly on LinkedIn. I think it's it's quite cool, because it just puts, makes you more human, and everybody can relate to it. Like every single person on this planet, maybe not Elon Musk, but all the other 99.9% of the population can.
Exactly. And it's good to see also the mindset also changing across VCs, and also some VCs also sending that message, right? In the past, it was this idea that the entrepreneur needs to be kind of the slave, and needs to be all in, and needs to be sleeping in the office and not wasting a single euro, and that kind of mindset. And we are seeing a different kind of entrepreneur, that also has the conditions to have a life where you build the business at the same time, so you don't need to kill yourself building a company. So kind of it makes me think of that old quote, it's incredible how men lose their health to get rich and then spend their fortune to get to recover their health, right? I'm not sure what was the quote and who said it, but that's a bit, I'm seeing that there is a new trend that you need to enjoy the moment, to enjoy the now, and to be happy today, and not to work to be happy tomorrow, because you never know if you'll be here tomorrow, right?
Yeah, and I think we can take a lot of advice from athletes, because athletes are really, I think, the best people of understanding energy levels and when to really sprint and go full out, all in, versus in a race where you need to preserve your energy and kind of get into a trot. So I think that mentality also on entrepreneurship level is super helpful, and both is very necessary, right? So it is hard work. People need to understand it's hard work, and need to sign up for that journey. But I think these sort of different energy levels and understanding how do I recoup my energy as well. And for a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people have figured it out perfectly yet, because active regeneration, it's when you run, you start to run slower, but you continue to run. So for me, it's also on the weekends, I like to debrief, but I also educate myself. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I do sports, and that for me is a active calm down. It's not fully, but it's you're still in that mode where you still learn, you still grow, but at the same time, you're minding your own health very much.
Exactly. And before we go to the last segment of the show, any final thoughts, any plans for the future for Cofenster? Any final advice for the ones who are listening before we get to the last segment of the show?
I would say have fun doing it. I mean, if you encounter times where it's completely fine to have bad days here and there, right? But if it's too much, it's like change it, leave it, love it. That's really my mentality. Either you change what you're doing, right? You leave it, or you start loving it and really enjoy the grind. So I think that's extremely important. And with Cofenser, we're building a really great and big business, and we see it. There's so much client interest, so much positive force. And for me, it's like it's exactly where I want to be with my time. And I've really figured out that's my mojo. I want to build great companies. That's what we're doing here. So really happy. And everything else is very much secondary.
Well done. And let's start with the first 3 self-reflective questions. If you'd have the opportunity to have a coffee with yourself at the beginning of Cofenster, what advice would you offer to your younger Tom?
Well, a very good friend and a mentor of mine once told me that there's a concept of 15 seconds of courage each day, and I really believe in it, and something I would have liked to have known a lot earlier. So the idea behind it is, we all have these situations in our day where we need some courage, where our initial reaction is, I don't want to do it, it's awkward or whatever. But really putting that mental state in and being like, once a day for 15 seconds, I'm going to be super courageous and do what feels uncomfortable and really put myself out there. That could be, you meet some interesting person in a cafe, you go walk over there, introduce yourself. It could be on that client call where, you want to get to the next stage and ask for budget and budget approval and budget holders. Uncomfortable situation, go for it, do it. Right? It's in the salary negotiation where, you really need to hone down and get that extra step. So that 15 seconds each day, right, puts you in a state where you're constantly, every day, getting out of your comfort zone and growing. I think that's, one of the best advice I've ever received, and I try to live by it every day. And really great things come out of it.
Great one, and always winning the fear component, right? Being able to overcome the fear to the other side. I think it's it's what also builds more courage. I really love that concept. So, and what are you the most proud on your journey so far?
That I sleep very good at night. Every time I go to bed, I do not look over my shoulder.
Important.
It's very important for me, and that's the proudest thing, I think, because whenever you build companies or just generally in life, you have these situations where you can take shortcuts, you can screw people over, you can do things which maybe get you ahead in that moment a little bit, but long time you build up a closet of skeletons. And I can on a personal level say that this is not the case, and I really do not have to look over my shoulder, and staying very true to yourself, and I think being very fair with people you deal with on a daily basis, something that makes you sleep very good at night. That's really important to recover as well.
Great mindset. Worst advice ever received?
Well, that's a tough question. To be honest with you, when I was a kid, my dad told me that I could eat the banana peel. Right? So, and to be honest with you, Mike, not kidding. I had a situation where my school teacher told me, like, she looked at me very confused. She said, "What are you doing?" Because I was eating the banana as a whole thing, and I always thought bananas are the most awful thing on this planet. Until I figured out that my dad fucked with me, and he was like, "No," she's like, "Stop eating the banana peel." Looking back, probably definitely the worst advice I've ever seen on the culinary side of things.
And we can kind of try to extract the lesson learned there, which is when someone, because is senior to you, tells you that something should be done in a certain way, check, do a double check on that.
Trust me.
And then the resource list. Your favorite book, business, non-business?
So my absolute favorite book in the world is The Prophet from Khalil Gibran.
Okay.
It's a book on poetry, very short, and he basically takes every instance of sort of our life, from love to business to partnership, friendship, cuisine, everything, and has just 2 pages with the most distilled life advice in a very poetic way. I always gift it to people who become fathers, start a business. I read it very, very often, like once a week, probably. It's probably the most impactful book on my journey. It's non-business. Love
it. Well done, Tom. Thanks for sharing. I will take a look at that one. Favorite movie or series?
Wow, Chef's Table is definitely, I think, my favorite series. I think Netflix has really, hit one out the park here. Just the aesthetics of food, of culinary scene is amazing. That is, I would say, from also, non-business, best one I've so far encountered. And maybe from a business side of film is Jerry Maguire. It's a sports comedy drama film. It's a favorite quote I always quote to my sales team, "Show me the money." It's really good for entrepreneurs. And I don't like Tom Cruise as a person, but a great actor in that film. I can highly recommend it.
Got it. And finally, your favorite podcast, excluding this one?
Excluding this one, I was about to say Scalable, obviously. I think, for SaaS founders, SaaStr, amazing, super condensed information. I would have loved to have known this a lot earlier. And 20 VC from Harry, also a really great podcast. 2 of the podcasts I listen to every week. Super amazing.
And both done very often by the same host, Ari Stebbings, right? So it's definitely doing a great job. Fully agreed. And congrats to Ari and to Jason Lemkin for the SaaStr podcast and conferences and show and articles and LinkedIn posts and so on. Tom, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. You are always invited to come back to keep sharing the next chapters of your journey. And thanks so much for making the time.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's been a real pleasure being here today.
Likewise, and to our community, thanks for being there. We keep inspiring you and making your life a little bit easier as you scale your business. See you soon and keep scaling.